Which one?
This one? Go ahead. Got my iPad.
This is corroborating facts. The 27th at 7:10, the tower's hit. He says that he denied that he was at. He started out at the helpline. That's why I looked at that. This is his phone call to his phone. I know it's not yet. Lieutenant. It was detective. Now it's lieutenant. Okay.
All rise. 60th District Court, State of Michigan, County of Muskegon is now in session. I will name Jacob Stark as presiding. Please make sure all cell phones are shut off and be seated.
is the People of the State of Michigan versus Kevin Laverne Bluhm. The file number is 16180-187FY. And the people of the State of Michigan are represented by Mr. Matthew Roberts of the Prosecutor's Office. And Mr. Bluhm is represented by his attorney, Mr. Timothy Hayes.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr.
Your Honor.
Hayes. And we have also...
Terry Shaw, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Shaw. How are you?
Very good.
Nice to see you again. Are the people ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Is defense ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor. We have a few preliminary matters.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. The first, Your Honor, is I'm going to ask the court to sequester witnesses in this case. It might be a little bit unusual.
No, it's not. I'm going to grant your request for sequestration
Okay.
unless there's an opposition to that, Mr. Roberts.
Well, I only have two witnesses, Your Honor. My first witness is going to be Detective Ferris from the Sheriff's Department, and my second witness is going to be Lieutenant Casher. And Lieutenant Casher is the main investigating officer on this case, so I would ask that Lieutenant Casher be allowed to stay in the courtroom for the testimony as the court rules allow.
All right.
Certainly, I understand that, Your Honor, except with the nature of the testimony and the fact that we are essentially agreeing to the admission of the transcript from Jeffrey Willis's testimony, it would be my preference to have Mr. Casher sequestered, Lieutenant Casher.
Well, I'm not going to sequester the representative of
Okay.
the state. They're entitled to keep one representative in the courtroom during the testimony and during the proceedings to assist and to help the prosecutor manage the case. That's pretty standard fare, so I'm not going to do that. He can control the order of his witnesses, but
Thank you.
but I will otherwise grant a order sequestering witnesses, and that would be reciprocal upon both parties. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Your Honor, the other matter, and Mr. Hayes just actually alluded to it, is that I believe we have an understanding and a stipulation that for purposes of this preliminary examination, the court will be allowed to consider the preliminary examination over which it presided for the Jeffrey Willis role in this abduction and kidnapping of Jessica Herringa. So we would stipulate that that transcript would be allowed to be used by the court for purposes of considering this prelim. Then the testimony from this prelim is going to focus on Mr. Bluhm.
All right. Hey, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you, Your Honor. My response to that is accurate. We are not stipulating to the probable cause aspect of Mr. Willis's preliminary examination, but we certainly are stipulating to the entry of all the evidence that was taken during that time, and obviously we understand the court will come to the same conclusion based on the same evidence. But in addition to that, I'd also like to ask the court to, we're going to be asking Lieutenant Casher specifically a lot of questions about his knowledge of the entire investigation. A lot of this information may have come from other sources, and the Lieutenant Casher's knowledge of it might be based on hearsay, and we're asking the court to give some quarter on the issue of hearsay. If Lieutenant Casher says, well, I don't know because I wasn't told, he has complete knowledge of it. He's the lead detective in the Jessica Herringa disappearance. So we're asking the court for a little bit of leeway on hearsay objections with respect to Lieutenant Casher, in exchange for not requiring all the witnesses.
Well, Mr. Roberts?
Well, it's difficult to respond to that, Your Honor, because I'm not sure what
It is, and here's
hearsay
where
is
I'm going
going
to deal
to
with that.
be.
Is I'm going to take it on an objection by objection basis.
Okay.
I can't anticipate what the purpose of the proffered testimony would be, whether it is in fact hearsay, whether it's non-hearsay purpose, whether, you see what I mean?
Yes.
It's really hard for me to give you a global, I'm going to relax the rules of evidence. I'm not going to do that. I don't know of any law that would
Just
allow me to relax the rule of evidence in exchange for a stipulation. That I'm not willing to do.
All right, thank you.
And Your Honor, there may be points where I don't object, obviously if there's some hearsay involved.
Well, that would be
But I
up
guess
to you,
I
Mr.
will.
Roberts. It's really hard for me to give you a global, I'm going to relax the hearsay rule order. That I don't believe I have any lawful authority to do that.
I'm asking for Lieutenant Casher's knowledge. If he is willing to testify to his knowledge may come from evidence that was gathered by other people in the Willis transcript. That's what I'm asking for. So it might not...
And again, the Willis prelim was over the course of 4 days.
Right. I'm
very difficult for me to rule on a general hearsay objection
I'm not
without
objecting to this.
knowing the specifics.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've addressed it.
Okay, yep, all right. Anything else, Mr. Roberts?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
All right, anything else, Mr.
I
Hayes?
have one more request,
Go
Your Honor.
ahead.
But I ask the court to take judicial notice of the 2 felonies that my client was convicted of, resulting from the same facts and circumstances. They both preliminary examinations started in this courtroom. They both were bound over and were, he sustained convictions in both cases in circuit court.
And those 2 felonies are what?
They were both lying to the police officer under violent crime investigation. I have case numbers, Your Honor, if important.
Yes, go ahead.
The first count, the first file was, in this court, was 16-178201 FY. When it arrived in circuit court, it was assigned 16-003910 FH.
Hold on a second.
Sorry.
16-000,
No, just 2 zeros.
okay?
3910 FH.
Okay,
The second file in this courtroom was 16-17813-9-FY, and when it arrived in circuit court, it was assigned 16-00333-2-FH.
thank you very much. All right. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. People are prepared to proceed and call Detective Lisa Ferris.
Well, what's your position on the request for the court to take judicial notice of 2 previous felony convictions?
Well, they are felony convictions, and I think the court can take judicial notice of facts which are obviously not in dispute. There's no way to dispute those convictions. I guess we'll have to address at a later point what the purpose of the court taking judicial notice of those is, but I don't object to the court taking judicial notice of those convictions.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so you're moving to the court to take judicial notice of 2 felony convictions arising out of these factual circumstances under Michigan Rule of Evidence 201, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Hayes?
That is correct.
All right, there being no objection, I will do that. Anything else, Mr. Hayes?
No.
Or Mr. Roberts?
No.
All right. That being said, then the people may call their first witness.
Thank you. Call Detective Lisa Ferris.
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You may have a seat. Please state and spell your name and give your occupation for the court record.
Lisa Ferris, detective with the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department. It's Lisa Ferris, F-R-E-R-E-S.
Detective, I want to direct your attention back to June 16th of last year, 2016. Were you working in your capacity as a detective for the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department at that time?
Yes, I was.
And specifically on that date, were you involved in an interview that took place at the Kentwood Police Department in Kent County?
Yes, I was.
And was that interview with Kevin Bluhm?
Yes.
And what was your purpose of being present for some or all of that interview?
My purpose was to interview Kevin Bluhm reference to the Becky Bletch homicide.
And the Rebecca Bletch homicide, was that a case that was assigned to you as a detective?
Yes, it was.
And so you were there for that interview for purposes of discussing that matter with Mr. Bluhm, is that correct?
That's correct.
And was it your understanding going into that interview that Mr. Bluhm had some possible information about the involvement of Jeffrey Willis in the Rebecca Bletch homicide?
Yes,
And that's why you were there?
correct.
Now, at some point, this interview took place at the Kentwood Police Department. At some point in the interview, did there come a point in time where you were actually speaking to Mr. Bluhm?
Yes.
And did Mr. Bluhm, well, first of all, let's address this issue. At that point in time, to your knowledge, was Mr. Bluhm in custody?
No, he was not.
And at that point, to your knowledge, had Mr. Bluhm been charged with any crimes?
No, he had not.
And again, this was just an interview of, was this just an interview of a witness
Just
from your
a,
perspective?
yes, just an interview.
And at some point during that discussion with Mr. Bluhm, did you have discussions with Mr. Bluhm regarding the Rebecca Bletch homicide?
Yes.
And at some point during those discussions, did there come a point in time where the discussion of Mr. Willis turned to the Jessica Herringa disappearance?
Yes, it did.
And did Mr. Bluhm make any statements to you initially in regards to Mr. Willis and having contact with Mr. Willis around the time of the Jessica Herringa abduction?
Yes, he did.
And without getting into specifics of what he said, what was your understanding of the conversation, the initial conversation that Mr. Bluhm had with Mr. Willis around the time of the Jessica Herringa abduction?
Mr. Willis had told Mr. Bluhm that Jessica Herringa, who he called the gas station girl, was at Jeffrey Willis's grandpa's house, who they referred to as Grandpa Ham.
And during the course of your investigation into this matter, did you come to know where that residence was?
Yes,
Where was that residence?
that was on Bailey Street in Norton Shores.
And as part of your involvement with this investigation, are you aware that multiple search warrants were conducted at that residence?
Yes,
And there's a family connection with Mr. Willis to that residence, is that right?
yes,
And so you said that your understanding from Mr. Bluhm was that Mr. Willis had contacted him about Jessica Herringa being at that residence, is that correct?
that's correct.
And was there some instruction given to Mr. Bluhm about what that meant or what he was to do?
He was to come over and see Jessica Herringa.
Being Mr. Bluhm.
Yes,
And did Mr. Bluhm indicate to you that he did in fact go to that residence for purposes of seeing somebody at that residence?
yes, he did.
And what did he describe to you in terms of going to that residence and what he observed?
He described the going down to the basement of the Bailey Street house. As he went down to the basement, he described seeing Jessica Herringa, who again he referred to as the gas station girl, laying face down, bound, her hands tied out to the side, her legs slightly spread and tied out to the side.
And did he indicate to you what the layout was, what was going on in the basement at that time?
He said there was a gray tarp underneath her. She was nude. There was a table at the end by her feet with a large video camera type on top of that table.
And did Mr. Bluhm describe to you, was there some prompting of him to do something to Jessica Herringa?
He was told to touch her several different times. Jeffrey Willis was standing over her when he had went down to the basement.
And did Mr. Bluhm indicate to you that he ever did touch or have contact with Jessica Herringa at that time?
Mr. Bluhm said he did not.
Did there come a point in time where there was a discussion about her being deceased?
Yes, Mr. Bluhm talked about not seeing Jessica move at all. He said she was facing away from him and she was not moving at all.
Could he say whether or not she was alive or dead at that point in time?
No, he didn't say specifically.
And then at some point during that interview then, was there contact made, if you know, with Lieutenant Casher from the Norton Shores Police Department?
Yes, he was contacted.
And for sequencing purposes, so the court understands, when you were questioning Mr. Bluhm and he was making these statements to you, was anybody from the Norton Shores Police Department present for that portion of the interview?
Not at that time. It was for the Becky Bletch interview.
And this incident that was described to you, Mr. Bluhm was describing to you, he was describing this having taken place at that house on Bailey Street.
That's correct.
Thank you, Detective. Any further questions?
Cross-examination, Mr. Hayes.
Detective, I'd like to start with the interview at, did you say it was in Grand Rapids?
Kentwood Police Department.
Kentwood? What day did that start, that interview?
It started June 16th, 2016.
About what time?
The appointment was for, I believe, 1:30 p.m. We didn't start for quite a while after that, possibly 4 to 6 p.m.
When you say "we," that
Sorry.
implies that there were other people there. Could you please tell me who else was present for that interview?
Yeah, Detective Sergeant Jacqueline Stasiak from the Michigan State Police Department.
Okay?
Special Agent Timothy Simon from the FBI.
Okay?
Detective Sergeant Ben Escalante with the Michigan State Police Department. I believe that was all at the beginning.
Now, this interview was conducted inside a conference room or an interview room inside the police station there, is that correct?
That's correct.
And did at any time your involvement move to another area inside the same building?
No, it did not.
So everything that you heard Mr. Bluhm say was in the same room, correct?
That day, yes.
Did you have another opportunity to interview Mr. Bluhm besides that day?
There was another interview at the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department
Prior to or
the next day.
the next day? I want to go back to the first interview on June 16th. Did that interview start and end on June 16th, or did it carry over into the next day?
It went into June 17th, the morning of.
Can you give the court an idea as to the duration of it? How long it took? And I understand there may be breaks and there may be
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
I would estimate approximately 12 hours. It ended about 6 a.m. the next morning at the Kentwood Police Department.
Thank you. Do you recall whether or not the interview was recorded, either audio or video or both?
It was audio with digital handheld recorders.
Is there any kind of video recording in it?
No,
It's all audio.
at the Kentwood Police Department.
Do you recall if the entire interview was recorded?
I do not believe it was. We had a problem since the duration of the interview was so long. We had problems with keeping the batteries up on the recorders and space on the recorders.
What type of recorders were they?
Just digital handheld audio recorders.
And if the defense team has not received any of those, or some of those, would you assist the people's representative to give us the information that we don't have?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to talk briefly about that interview process and whether or not my client requested an attorney at any point. Do you recall whether or not Mr. Bluhm ever requested an attorney?
No, he did not.
Were you sure that he did not ever request?
To my knowledge, he did not request an attorney.
Okay, you didn't hear him
No.
ask for an attorney. At any time, did you or did you hear anyone else Mirandize him?
Yes.
Could you tell me who did and when?
It would have been Detective Sergeant Ben Escalante.
Okay. Do you recall at what time approximately? Was it at the commencement of the interview?
It would have been at the beginning.
Okay. Do you remember if my client had any kind of response?
He chose to talk, yes.
So at that point, you've already testified that Mr. Bluhm was not under arrest. Was he free to leave?
Yes, he was.
So if he was free to leave, why would he be Mirandized?
It was just part of the process, I guess.
Do you recall at any time, and I'm referring to specifically late in that day on the 16th, maybe 11 p.m. or around midnight, that Mr. Bluhm was allowed to leave, go out in the parking lot, maybe have a cigarette or talk to his wife? Do you recall that
Yeah.
situation?
Yes, more than once.
Okay. At that time, was Mr. Bluhm free to leave?
Yes,
So he could have just gotten his car with his wife and driven home?
yes.
Do you think that Mr. Bluhm believed he was free to go?
Your Honor, I'm going to
Yes.
object to that. That's calls for speculation. I don't know how the detective would know what's in Mr. Bloom's mind about whether or not he was free to leave or not.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to overrule the, I'm sorry, your objection
I'm
was to speculation.
speculation.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
I'll withdraw the question. You specifically didn't tell him he had to return to the conference room, correct?
I saw that.
Do you remember hearing anybody say, you gotta come back in?
Mr. Bluhm wanted to speak with us.
Okay, thank you. So then you indicated there was another interview the next day.
Yes,
Where was that again?
the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department.
Okay. And you were present for that interview?
For just the very beginning of it.
About how long ago do you think?
I'm not sure. I went home after the beginning of that interview.
Do you remember who was there at that time?
Several investigators.
Okay. Do you remember any of their names?
Detective Sergeant Stasiak was still there from the Michigan State Police Department. I believe at that time Detective Matt Schultz with the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department. Lieutenant Casher
Okay.
with the Norton Shores Police Department. Detective Mark Vanderstelt with the Norton Shores Police Department. And I couldn't name anymore.
Just back up briefly to the Kentwood interview. Did Lieutenant Casher show up at all for that at any time?
Yes, he did.
Do you recall about the time on the 16th?
Approximately 4 in the morning on the 17th.
On the 17th. Okay, thank you. After you left the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department on the 17th, did you have any more contact with Mr. Bluhm?
No, I did not.
Did you have any more contact with the investigation as to the disappearance of Jessica Herring?
Yes.
And what was your role, I guess, in the Herring investigation?
We had quite a few investigators still working as a task force, just working on different tasks of the investigation.
Did the investigation for Ms. Fletch and the investigation for Ms. Herring, did they at some point get consolidated into a task force?
We were working, not formally, but we were all working together
Okay.
with the Jeffrey Willis case.
And so, because of perhaps a common suspect, the detectives essentially and all the officers involved were communicating together. Who was the lead detective on Ms. Fletch's investigation?
I was.
Would you say that Lieutenant Casher was the lead detective in the Herring investigation?
Yes.
Did you feel, or I'm sorry, let me restate that. Any information that you received with regard to Ms. Herring, did you always forward that to Lieutenant Casher?
Yes, I believe so.
So the statements that you heard Mr. Bluhm say at the Kentwood Police Department were profound. I mean, they were fantastic information, meaning it was enlightening for the investigation. Is that correct? I mean, they were revealing, I guess, is the question.
Revealing, yes.
For Ms. Herring's investigation.
Yes.
So my question is, how did you determine whether or not Mr. Bluhm was an attention seeker or if his information was accurate?
There was a lot of detail that he had revealed to us. And just based on the detail and some of the stuff that he had told us specifically about the Bletch homicide was correct.
Okay. So I guess I'll accept the answer and leave it there. Prior to that interview at the Kentwood Police Department, you didn't have any contact with Mr. Bluhm, is that correct?
No.
So, for example, the search warrant that was executed on June 14th at the Bluhm home, you weren't present for that, correct?
I was present. Mr. Bluhm was not there during the majority of that. He did return, I guess, at the very end of that search warrant,
Okay.
and I did speak with him, I guess, briefly, but
So you were present at that?
yes.
At that, okay. So you're familiar with the search on June 14th?
Yes.
And did you participate in searching the home?
I conducted interviews outside while it was being searched.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit A, and it's purported to be a list of evidence that was seized on that day, June 14th, from the Bluhm residence. And my question to you is, do you recognize the document, first of all?
Yes.
Did you draft the document?
I did not.
Did your team draft it? People that were doing this, conducting the search on that day?
Yes.
Can you verify that the inventory there is an accurate list of the items that were removed from the Bluhm residence on that day?
Yes, it appears to be.
Thank you. Are you aware of anything that was removed on that day that would not have appeared on that list?
No.
Now, in August, there was another search warrant executed, and I believe it was for one of the vehicles owned by Mr. and Mrs. Bluhm. Did you participate at all in that?
I did not.
Your Honor, I have nothing further for this witness.
And you direct Mr. Roberts.
Just a few. Detective, you indicated that you were present at Mr. Bluhn's home when that search was being conducted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And ultimately, as a result of your role in this investigation, was there a discussion about the evidence that had been seized from that home?
Yes, there was.
And specifically, one of the items seized was a computer tower. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall, was there something unusual about one of the computer towers that was removed from that home?
Yes, the hard drive had been removed from that. When it was found, the hard drive was missing.
And were you ever able to locate that hard drive, if you know?
No, it was not located.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Hayes, you look like you want to ask another question.
I do, Your Honor, just based on the questions that Mr. Roberts asked. Did you personally inspect that computer? Or
I did not.
do you know whether or not it was determined if that hard drive was removed hastily?
I don't know if that was determined.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right. Detective, thank you. I have no questions. May the witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, you're excused, Detective. Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Lieutenant Casher.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You have a seat. Please state and spell your name and give your occupation for the court record.
Michael Kasher, Kasher. I'm a lieutenant with the Norton Shores Police Department.
Lieutenant, I want to direct your attention back to the early morning hours of June 17th of last year. Were you working in your capacity as a lieutenant for the Norton Shores Police Department at that time?
That's correct.
And although this has already been covered in the Jeffrey Willis prelim and that there's a stipulation that the court can consider that information, what is your role as it relates to the investigation into the disappearance of Jessica Harrington?
I was the original sergeant detective that was called out to the scene April 26, 2013 at the Axon Station for the disappearance of Jessica Harrington.
And so are you the lead investigator on the case?
That seems to be turned out the case, yes.
And that's still true today, even though you're now achieved the rank of lieutenant, is that correct?
That's correct.
Let's start here with and I'd like to give the court just an overview of the sequence of events as you understand them, and your role in them in those early morning hours. Without getting into the specifics yet about what was discussed, can you, to the best of your recollection, describe to the court the timeline of events beginning with your involvement in that interview?
Are you talking the 17th?
Yes, the early
Okay.
morning hours.
I was contacted by Detective Ferris and Stasiak, and also Detective Sergeant Vanderstelt at my home. I was at home at the time, sleeping. I was asked to come to the Kentwood Police Department. It was probably about 3 in the morning, maybe just before 3 in the morning I got the call that the statements were being made by Mr. Bluhm about the disappearance of Jessica and where she might be. I then got ready. I picked up Mr. Detective Sergeant Vanderstelt at the police department, and then we went from the police department to Kentwood PD, where it's probably just after 4, maybe around 4:20 in the morning. I arrived and then went into the room where Mr. Bluhm was at.
So then, at that point, again, without getting into specifics yet about what was discussed, was there a point in time there where you were interviewing Mr. Bluhm?
Yes, sir.
And at some point in time, you left the Kentwood Police Department around 6 o'clock in the morning, is that right?
That's correct.
What took place when you left the Kentwood Police Department?
We left the Kentwood Police Department. Detective Sergeant Vanderstelt was the driver. I was in the back seat. It was my vehicle. It's an SUV. We gave a ride to Mr. Bluhm. He was to take us to where, at that time, he said that Jessica had been buried.
And did you in fact go to that location?
Yes, we did.
And there was a search conducted at that location?
Yes, there was.
And obviously, unfortunately, that search did not yield Jessica Harrington's body, is that
No,
right?
it did not.
Now, after that search then, was there a subsequent interview that took place of Mr. Bluhm?
After I was done searching, he left the scene before me, and probably about 11:30, quarter to 12 in the afternoon, or quarter to 12 there on the 17th. I went back to Oak Street where he was at the County Sheriff's Department, and he was being interviewed, and then I went into the interview room at that time, yes.
So we have interview at Kentwood, a search, and then another interview of Mr. Bluhm taking place at the Sheriff's Department, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you were not present for the beginning of the interview that had taken place at the Kentwood Police Department, correct?
No, sir.
But at some point in time, were you present for the interview with the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department offices where Mr. Bluhm was advised of his Miranda rights? If you know.
I was part of the interview around, I don't know, 12:30, 1 o'clock. That second part with Detective Sergeant Forner of the State Police, but I wasn't there when any Miranda was being given or anything like that.
So you're not sure if Miranda was given at that point?
I cannot tell you if it was or was not.
But you were also part of that interview with Mr. Bluhm at that point at the Sheriff's Department, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now that we've got the sequence kind of laid out, I want to back up to when you first arrived at the Kentwood Police Department, and you said you went in and began questioning Mr. Bluhm. What, if any, statements did he make to you at that point in regards to the Jessica Harrington investigation?
The second interview?
The first interview,
The first
backing
interview?
up to the Kentwood Police Department.
I kind of got a little briefed of what was kind of going on, and then I went into the room where I observed Mr. Bluhm. He was definitely upset, visibly shaking. He was kind of crying, and then I introduced myself, who I was, to him, and he said that I could take you to Jessica. Just let's go now.
Was that like the first thing he said to you?
Basically the first first couple sentences, yes.
And what did you do in response to that?
Well, I told him, let's hold on, let's work up to what's going on, kind of catch me up to speed. I felt that Mr. Bluhm looked like he was being very honest, forthright. Definitely somebody that, you know, we were hoping that would come forward, a witness to this. And so I kind of got a background of how he was able to know this information.
And so that you went over in some detail with him the statement in regards to the Jessica Herringa disappearance?
Yes.
And what was your understanding from Mr. Bluhm as to his role, if any, that he played in the abduction and or the death of Jessica Herringa?
Well, the first part of the interview, meaning at the Kentwood PD there, it was basically came across to me that his involvement with anything was minimal, but he was given the information by Jeff Willis, and he felt like he was under stress, under threatened by Mr. Willis to assist him and help him get rid of the body, and he came there, saw where Jessica was laying. He told me that he thought she was deceased. I asked how or why he thought that, because she wasn't moving, he said, the color of her skin. There were some injuries. There was a video camera that Mr. Willis had. He didn't want to be there. He first said that he left initially. Then he stopped by there a few days later. He told me that the body was taken out to the railroad tracks, which would have been off of Sheridan. He gave me the location just up the street from Willis's home. He said the last time he talked, he believed since at least August of 2015, he believed that the body was still there, and if it's not there, then Willis would have moved it.
So we described the specific location where you then, after this portion of the interview was done, went and the search was conducted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did he indicate what his involvement was in that body being taken to that location, to the location near Jeffrey Willis?
Not at that point in time, not in great detail.
Was he, so when he was describing it to you, was he describing it as if Jeff had done these things?
Yes.
Not Mr. Bluhm?
Right.
So at that point, still, is it related to your portion of the investigation? In your mind, was Mr. Bluhm under arrest or in custody in some portion?
Oh, no, he was, I never thought about charges. I was just happy that he had information that could assist me in closing this case.
And you kind of covered this a little bit with Detective Ferris, but through your contact with Mr. Bluhm that at the Kentwood Police Department, was it your understanding that the things he had described about seeing Jessica Herringa's body, was that at the house that we've referred to as Grandpa Ham's house on Bailey Street in Norton Shores?
That's correct, 3038 Bailey, that's right.
And there's a family connection there between Mr. Willis and that house, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as part of the overall investigation into Jeffrey Willis, multiple search warrants were conducted at that residence, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, this was all part of the preliminary examination from Mr. Willis, but was there also phone records that indicate Mr. Willis's whereabouts in relation to that house on the night that Jessica Herringa went missing?
That's correct.
And refresh the report's recollection as it relates to Mr. Willis's connection to that house on that particular evening.
3038 Bailey is north of the Exxon gas station. And looking at the statements or looking at the records of Jeffrey Willis's phone records, it shows that there was tower hits, that he was either making a call or receiving a call from his home address on Sheridan. So somebody would have been calling him. And tower hits were hitting off near or by 3038 Bailey. What's significant is it was 11:23 p.m. on the 26th, the night of. There was another phone call about 5 to midnight, same location. And then he received some type of either a text or voicemail at about midnight. And then another call at 5 after 12 on the 27th, all showing in that same range of 3038 Bailey on the different towers. So we know for a fact that at least we believe that Jeffrey Willis was at that location.
And this is within roughly 45 minutes to an hour after it's believed that Jessica Herringa was abducted from the gas station, is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, a lot of this is refresher, but just so the court has a clear picture of Mr. Willis, again, Mr. Willis subsequently would give an interview with one of your, two of your officers in regards to his potential role in this, back when the investigation first started, correct?
That's correct.
And he gave an alibi or gave his whereabouts that evening and indicated to you that he was home up until around midnight or so, is that correct?
That's correct. He told the detectives that he left the comic store, which is located just behind the Points Mall, located behind the Exxon station, around 9:30. And he was home till about 12:30 at his residence on Sheridan with his wife. And then at about 12:30 he left and went over to the Bailey Street address to get some wood or to get a kennel. And then he went to Taco Bell after that.
Now, this and that information seemed to be contradicted by the phone records, which would put him at the Bailey address at least an hour or so before that.
Yes, sir.
Now, as you're questioning Mr. Bluhm about this, and Mr. Bluhm is describing to you about these events having taken place at that Bailey Street address, had any of that information about Mr. Willis's phone records been made available to the public in any fashion?
No, not at all.
Would there be any way that Mr. Bluhm could have accessed any of that information through the Norton Shores Police Department or any other police agency?
No, not at all.
I then want to fast forward to the point where you leave Kentwood. You said that you drove back to the Muskegon area in your SUV, but you were not driving, is that correct?
That's correct. Detective Sergeant Mark Vanderstelt of the North Shores Police Department was driving. I was in the back seat behind the driver, and Mr. Bluhm was next to me in the back seat.
And at some point in time, did you allow Mr. Bluhm to make a phone call?
Yes, sir.
And who did he call?
He called his wife. He used my phone to call his wife because he didn't have his phone.
And was that, did you observe both, or did you hear both ends of that phone call?
Yeah, I think he had it on speaker, and it was then recorded by Detective Sergeant Vanderstelt because we recorded. We don't have a setup recording in our vehicle because it's my vehicle. It's not a patrol car, so we try to record things when we have, with our policies and all that. We try to record when we have anybody in our cars.
And this is roughly now 6 o'clock or so in the morning?
I'd say
On the 17th?
a couple minutes after 6, yes, sir.
And you said you did hear that phone conversation that Mr. Bluhm had with his wife.
Yes, sir.
And from Mr. Bloom's end, what was Mr. Bluhm saying during that phone call to his wife?
Well, he was calling his wife, just giving her kind of an update. That's what I assumed it was going to be, of an update of what we were doing. He made statements to the fact that, and I'm paraphrasing right now, but made the statements that he was taking us, the detectives, to a place where Jeffrey Willis had taken a body, and he should have done this. He should have done this 3 years ago. He's doing the right thing now, but he's doing this. He had nothing to do with it, and that he's going to have to resign from work.
And did he give instructions on how that resignation was to take place? If you recall?
I don't recall.
But there was a discussion about him resigning from work during this phone call with his wife.
Yes.
And again, at that point, had you placed Mr. Bluhm under arrest?
No.
And was he still a cooperative witness at that point in your mind?
Yes.
And did he indicate to his wife, if you recall on that phone call, that this had taken some type of physical toll on him over the years? Since
He
this
said,
took place?
like again, paraphrasing, but he said, well, some of the reasons why he gained a lot of weight and he's been sick off his ass is for some of this some of the stuff that Jeff has told him.
Now, at that point in your mind, did the information that Mr. Bluhm was giving you seem credible?
Absolutely.
And did those comments to his wife strike you as well? What impact, if anything, did that phone conversation, you hearing that phone conversation, have in relation to how you viewed Mr. Bluhm?
I think it had the biggest impact at that point in time. I mean, I'm taking all this information in, and we didn't have a lot of time to corroborate any of his statements. A little bit here and there, like the 3038 Bailey is a corroborating statement, like you said. He shouldn't have known all that. The information of him going down the stairs and going up from the back, going down the stairs, he must have been there. And then I put myself in people's positions. When you're calling up as is a police officer, and he said that he wanted to save his pension for her. I find it strikingly because he wasn't under arrest. We weren't looking to charge him. And the only way to do that, you're trying to do that, is to knowing that you're going to be charged or you're going to be arrested at some point. And so you would resign to save that pension. I think when you're talking to your significant other or your wife or your daughter or whoever, that you tend to be very open and honest, trying to get them up to date. And when you say that you're sick, you've been sick, you're on medication, and you gained a lot of weight because of the last 3 years of what somebody's done and somebody's told you, it impacted me big. I thought at that point in time, I really felt that this person was trying to help us.
And again, up until that point, though, Mr. Bluhm had specified to you that he knew the location where the body was through Mr. Willis, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that as of a certain date prior to this taking place, I think you said August of 2015, that's where Jessica Herring's body would have been located.
That's correct.
And that if it was not there, what was the reason for that?
He said that he'd been, Willis kind of kept telling him to keep his mouth shut. Don't be saying anything. If you do, I'll move her. If you tell anybody, I will move her. He kept kind of making those threats.
So Mr. Willis had made repeated references to moving the body from that location.
That's correct.
And then ultimately, as we've indicated, the search is conducted of that location, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that process takes several hours.
It took probably about 4 hours, 4.5.
And Jessica Herring's body was not located at that location.
No, it was not.
And then did you go then back to the Sheriff's Department, I should say back to, because you weren't there previous, but you went to the Sheriff's Department because Mr. Bluhm was at the Sheriff's Department, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then at some point you became involved in, we'll call it the second interview of Mr. Bluhm, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what, if anything, what additional information did Mr. Bluhm give you at that time in regards to Jessica Herring's body and the disposal of that body?
Well, I went in and basically confronted Mr. Bluhm, saying that she wasn't out there. And the search wasn't just with me, it was with 5, 6 different other people, and we brought out cadaver dogs. The cadaver dogs covered a vast, big area, and based on their training and their information and what they had told me was that a body is not out here, and there is no body out here. We did, do some different digging because I, possibly thought there was an area where Mr. Bluhm actually did point out that he thought that she was buried right here, and it resulted in no results. So I went back and I confronted him. I thought that he was lying about that area. I thought that he took me on a wild goose chase to that location. He says that, he must have moved it. He being
Mr. Willis?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Willis must have moved it. That he has no idea where he had taken her. He knows for a fact he had taken her out there. That's where he thought she was last seen at.
And at some point during that interview then, did the information become more specific about why Mr. Bluhm believed the body was located at that particular location?
Yeah, throughout the interview, we said step by step, how would you know this? Now, there's a lot of statements that he would make, and that when you make statements, either one, it's either told to you specifically or you were there. And after a while, Mr. Bluhm would tell us that he initially in the first interview, he said he got up the stairs, he came down the stairs, saw the body, thought it was deceased, saw Mr. Willis, and then turned around and got out of there. Then he initially came back and said that, well, he did stay. He started going up the stairs. Willis yelled at him to come back down. He then came back down. He described how she was tied up. She was on either a gray or a white type sheet. It was not a tarp because it had some wrinkles in it. That Willis asked him to help remove the body. And there was some damage or some gash mark to the head of the victim, and also that he said that Mr. Willis was telling him about how he sexually assaulted Jessica.
Now, let's talk about the head wound for just a second. What information had been made available to the public in regards to how it was believed that Jessica Miranda was taken from that gas station?
None.
And through the course of your investigation, was there information that was received and evidence that was gathered indicated to you that Jessica had been struck in some way?
There was a spot of blood behind the Exxon station, and just recently in the preliminary hearing, we discovered through the investigation that, well, let me back up. In the initial on-site investigation, there is a cover to the laser sight that belonged to a Walther 22. And through this investigation, when the team pulled over Mr. Willis and found the Walther 22 and located it back to the owner, I think it's Chantal Adams, she stated that there was a laser sight that was attached to the gun. There was no more laser sight when the team got the gun, the officers, when they arrested him. We verified this through Gary's Guns, that a laser sight was part of that gun. What is believed is that she was struck. She was struck, forcing that cap and the batteries off the laser sight and dropping some blood at that site behind the Exxon station.
And again, as part of the preliminary examination, did you ever, in the initial search or any of the searches at the gas station, locate any other evidence suggesting that Jessica Miranda had been shot with that gun?
No.
No shell casing?
Nothing.
And a very small blood spot?
Very small.
Which would not necessarily indicate that the person had been shot or sustained some type of life-threatening injury?
That's correct.
And again, this information, though, obviously known to investigators, was never part of the public information dispersed about Jessica Miranda's abduction.
First time we released it was during the preliminary examination of Mr. Willis.
All right, so then let's back up then. We're at the second interview at the Sheriff's Department, and Mr. Willis is now asking Mr. Bluhm for specific help in doing something to Jessica Miranda's body. What did Mr. Bluhm tell you that he did in regards to Ms. Miranda's body?
He said that Jeff wanted him to help him remove the body. So they laid her out, untied her hands, laid her out on the blanket or on the sheet, and they folded her up, quote by Mr. Bluhm, quoting is that they folded her up like a taco. Then they picked her up, Mr. Willis did, and her head went over the shoulder. And at that point in time, there was some leaking from the head wound, and also from the buttock area. They went up the stairs, and Mr. Bluhm opened up the hatch to the van, which there was some plastic laid down already in the van, in Mr. Willis's van. And then they put the body in the van, and then they shut the hatch.
And I'm sorry, you may have said this. Who actually was carrying the body at that point?
Mr. Willis.
And Mr. Bluhm assisted in opening up the van?
Yes, sir.
And where do they go from there after they get the body into the van?
They went across. They drove separately. He had driven his Suburban, and Mr. Willis drove his silver gray van. And then they went across over Broadway, Sherman. I don't have the streets to me, but then finally getting on to Sheridan, ended up near Laketon, just south of Laketon, or north of Laketon, I'm sorry, and to the railroad place. Before that, they had stopped. There's a drywall place just south of the railroad tracks opening, and that's where they stopped, right there.
And why did they stop there?
They parked their, Mr. Bluhm parked the Suburban, and then he got in the silver van in the front seat. They drove down the 2-track of the railroad tracks, and a hole had already been dug. At that point in time, it would have been on the north side of the tracks. And they got out, and they laid the body in they both grabbed the body, took the body, walked over there, and then put the body in the hole.
And the location that he's describing is actually the location that had been searched that morning, is that correct?
That's correct.
At that point, what did you do as part of your interview with Mr. Bluhm?
Well, I went back at him, okay, because there's a lot of parts I can believe up to that point, but when you search and you have 5 different people and 2 cadaver dogs telling you that there was no body there, I said it didn't happen, at least at the location of the railroad tracks off of Sheridan. I said, I don't believe that. He said, then I don't know where he had taken her. He must have moved her. He had taken her somewhere else. And I said, I think you know where. He said, no, this happened, and he gave me a time frame at about, he said, for his purposes, Mr. Bluhm said that night he was at a bowling banquet over at the Mount Garfield Hill Climb place, which is off of Lake Harbor Road. And then probably around 10:30 is when he went over to 3038 Bailey. And at about 11:30 is when he was there back and forth with Willis. Probably around 12:15 or so, 12:30, they then brought the body out to the railroad tracks.
And to be clear, so there's no confusion, the day that Mr. Bluhm is describing to you, this is actually the Saturday. Jessica Herring went missing on the Friday night, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, I think Mr. Bloom's work records show that he was actually at work on Friday night, is that correct?
That's correct.
So his contact with Ms. Herring at the house and with Mr. Willis at the house was taking place that following day on Saturday?
Saturday night into Sunday morning.
And Mr. Bluhm, in the course of that, when you're confronting him with the fact that the body wasn't located and your suspicion being that there might be more information, gave you information about his whereabouts prior to going over to the Bailey address?
That's correct.
And were you able to verify that information to a certain extent with phone
To a
records?
certain extent, yes. Where his phone records showed that at around 7:30, he had made a call to his, I think to his wife or to his home, and the towers are hitting off of in that area of the motorcycle hill climb area, which is the Lake Harbor area.
So that lends some consistency to his statement or believability to his statement about where he was, at least prior to going over to the Bailey house.
That's correct.
Then as the interview progressed, what happened?
Well, the interview progressed because I kept telling him that you have to have more. My belief is that he's brought into a situation, whether he's forced into the situation or voluntary, but he's brought into a situation when you're talking about a murder of a female that's been abducted and then killed. And then you have no knowledge, and then Jeff stops talking altogether. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that's how humans are made up. You're trusting somebody to help you move a body and commit a crime, but yet you're not going to ever say anything ever again, and you're not going to ask where and who and what and where's the body now. And so we kept pressing. When he said around 12:30, I guarantee we were out there. He was saying, I'm not lying, we were out there at 12:30. I said, I have a problem with that because his phone records, meaning Mr. Jeffrey Willis's phone records, shows that he was northbound on US 31 near M120 making a call, and the tower hits are hitting at 11:45. So I said, they're out there at 12:30 burying the body, but yet 15 minutes later, he's already northbound. So we're talking Sunday, the 28th, northbound. Then he gets Mr. Willis. Then he gets on to M120, headed a northeast direction, and again at 106, the towers are hitting Mr. Willis's phone.
So consistent with Mr. Willis traveling northeast?
That's correct. It just doesn't, none of that was making sense to me. And he says, I don't know. I have no idea why.
He being Mr. Bluhm?
Mr. Bluhm, correct. Has no idea why he would be going out that way or that he was headed that way. And then at that point in time, he stopped and said, I'm lying. I'm lying about the railroad tracks. I'm lying about everything.
So at the end of the interview, Mr. Bluhm tried to say that he was lying about the entire thing.
That's correct.
But at least in your mind, a lot of the information, is it fair to say that Mr. Bluhm had information about this abduction that he could not have gotten from any other source other than from Jeffrey Willis or being involved?
That and a lot of other little statements along the line through the interviews with Detective Sergeant Stasiak, Detective Sergeant or Detective Ferris. There's a lot of different statements that he had made that coincides with whether he got the information directly from Willis or he was part of the information or part of the act itself.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I have no further questions.
Mr. Hayes.
Thank you.
So in my first cross-examination, I talked about your role in the disappearance of Jessica Herringa and identified you as the lead detective. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Is there any knowledge or information that you at some point discovered was not relayed to you? Do you believe there's information out there that was not given to you with respect to Ms. Herringa?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay, so in your opinion, you were essentially, the buck stops here on information for Ms. Herringa's disappearance. Is that your understanding or you believe?
Yeah, I guess, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I'd like you to talk about, essentially what your role has been in Ms. Herringa's disappearance in the investigation. And so we've already talked about some of it. It was assigned to you. You went to the scene on the day that she disappeared. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And subsequent to that initial crime scene, what did your involvement look like?
On that night of?
On the night of and subsequent to it. So, did this become your primary focus at that time?
Well, it's a long story, Mr. Hayes, but I'll try to give you is what you need or what you want. I arrived on the scene. The officers got a call, and the call itself was just an open door, suspicious open door, because, and we've gotten them before. They get there and somebody's calling that I think it was Mr. Harpster called, the original complainant called and says that nobody's here. So our officer gets there, finds that nobody's there, and then another officer gets there and finds nobody's there, and they search the place and then they search around it. What they located was a blood spot in the back in what they thought was a Walter Laser site. Based on that the car was still there, her property was still there, they thought this could be something bad, or it could be she just left the scene and that has nothing to do with anything. At about 10 after 12, I got a call from the sergeant that was on the scene at that time as I was home, and then I responded out there. By 12:20 or 12:25, I was out there at the scene. When I arrived on the scene, they showed me what they had done. So then, of course, we have to do it again, go through the whole place, search, make sure. Then you're searching outside that parameters on the grounds. And then you start looking, okay, is that blood? And then we start our process. And then I kind of give directing orders to our officers from photographs to taking up the blood, swabbing up the blood, and then collecting the evidence of the watch batteries, or what they look like watch batteries, but they were the batteries to the laser sight, and then the laser sight cover itself. From that point on, there was a lot of things that started happening with the witness that saw the van at that time frame. I interviewed her and then her husband. Then they made a statement that there was a guy that always hung out there. He was driving by at that time. We flagged him down. I interviewed him, then made a search of his van.
That's not Mr. Willis, correct?
That was not Mr. Willis, no, sir.
Okay.
Then this person had told me a relationship he had with her. So then I sent a sergeant or a trooper out to his house to again further search. I then brought out a dog from the state police to track around just in case she had walked off. Her track or her scent kind of ended right where that blood was at. It didn't go up
That
further.
blood wasn't identified as Ms. Harris's blood, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The blood was
It was,
actually identified as
it
her blood.
is identified as Ms. Herringer's blood through DNA. So from that point on, I then notified, at that time I was a detective sergeant, so I notified my lieutenant. And he asked me what I thought. I said, I think we have one of my reasons, or one of the things I said is I think we have a problem. I think this could be foul play. At 6 in the morning, I contacted First Lieutenant Cam Hankey of the State Police to start a task force to assist us in this abduction. And by 8 in the morning, we were at the police department, and 2 detectives from the State Police came in. And then by 11 o'clock, I probably had 20 so detectives, and we were working from that point on.
So at that point, once you got the task force organized and you acknowledge at least that there's some foul play and maybe that she just didn't walk off on her own, then the work probably just begins at that point, correct? I mean, you've got to interview people, you've got to look for if there's any video from the store, that sort of thing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you did all those things?
Yes, sir.
And that was in 2013?
And 14, and 15.
Okay. So you went through this in detail. And what I'm trying to do is just establish that, you are the complete knowledge in terms of the investigation on the disappearance of Jessica.
Yes, sir.
When did you first learn about the home on Bailey Street?
I first learned on the home on Bailey Street was the day that the search warrant was being executed on Jeffrey Willis.
Do you remember what that date was?
No, sir. I believe it was sometime in May. I don't know.
May of 2016?
May of 2016. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that would have been prior to you ever meeting Mr. Bluhm.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Was it ever made public, or was the news ever leaked that the team was investigating or searching this house on Bailey Street?
Oh, I'm sure that yes, the news was all over it. I can't tell you about I didn't really check it, but I know that the news cameras were out there. Yes, sir.
So Mr. Bluhm's knowledge that something that the police thought something may have happened at that residence isn't a secret, correct?
That they're searching?
Yeah. That it exists?
Probably not.
All right. And so what I'm just asking you about is the corroboration that you testified to with respect to Mr. Bluhm's knowledge of the residence. The residence was searched prior to Mr. Bluhm's statements, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've already stated that as far as the actual abduction, Mr. Bluhm is exonerated on that because his work records show he was at work on that day.
That's correct.
What I'm trying to understand from your testimony is you've indicated that you, at one point at least, and maybe several points, thought that Mr. Bluhm was lying to you. Correct?
Well, wait a minute. No. You said several times.
Well, at least once.
At least once, and that was after the initial, when I searched the railroad tracks.
Okay.
That's when I thought he was lying about where he had put the body.
And then it was searched, and you know, he said he was lying, but then he had more information, and you're trying to determine whether or not it's true or false. How do you determine whether or not it's true or false? Is it just simply based on his statements?
Well, no, it's not simply based on his statements. It's corroborating his statements that he has given to us. But also it's the totality of the circumstances that, you know, from the time I come in talking to him to the time we were taking the ride to where he said that he and Mr. Willis had put her all the way to the end. There are little differences. There are things that, you know, from her being struck, Mr. Willis stalking her or watching her schedule, and we know Mr. Willis was in there multiple times. We know Mr. Willis was in there that night of. He would have to have had some type of knowledge that Mr. Willis at least told him that. He's telling us, or he had told me and Detective Sergeant Forner in the interview, that he was at the hill climb, which is located at the 5300 block of Lake Harbor, about, you know, that evening, about a bowling banquet, and then he went from there over to 3038 Bailey. Well, I know from his cell phone on the tower hits, he was at that location. From that point on...
You mean the location of the banquet?
That's correct. That's correct. From that point on, he tells us that he walked downstairs into the basement. That the truth is that you know, the news media was out there, you know, as they were watching a search, but they were never in the house while we were searching. There is back story. I asked him. He said there's two entrances, front and back. He went to the back, which goes directly downstairs into that basement. Without that, he had to know that. I didn't tell him that.
Okay, well, I
So
trust that's true, but you must know the relationship between the owner of that home and Mr. Bluhm through your investigation. Is that correct?
the owner was, you mean Mr. Willis or his
Grandpa
grandpa? Grandpa, yes.
Grandpa Hand.
Yes.
So is it your opinion that Mr. Bluhm's first visit to that Bailey Street address was this incident that he allegedly is telling you about with Mr. Willis?
No, he told me that he had been there before to help fix a garage door that had been broken. Mr. Willis didn't know how to fix it, so he had been over there, and he remembers Grandpa Ham at that time deteriorating and kind of outside there. The garage was a detached garage. It's not part of the house.
He never told you that he had been there prior to that?
He never told me it was prior to that or in the basement prior to that.
So if there was a sheet, a gray or white sheet that was allegedly used, was that ever recovered?
No, sir.
And was there anything else that was recovered from the Bailey Street address which would corroborate anything that Mr. Bluhm said?
No, sir.
So if Mr. Bluhm's statements were true, then it would have given you a lot of information, a lot of leads to go from. Is that true?
I think you have to be more specific. I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so I'll restate my question
Okay.
a little more specifically. Exactly what did Mr. Bluhm tell you that led you to concrete evidence against Mr. Willis?
Well, we know that our belief is that she is deceased since we have not seen her in 3.5 years, and we have no information that she's still alive.
But that was your belief before you met Mr. Bluhm.
That's true.
What I want to know is, my question is very specific. What piece of evidence did you recover as a result of Mr. Bluhm's statements?
That Mr. Willis was at that house.
Did you find any
That weekend of, the same weekend. Not just that he was at that house, Mr. Hayes, but he was at that house the 26th and the 27th into the 28th.
Yes, I understand that's your statement, but you searched that house before you ever met Mr. Bluhm.
Correct, right,
And
so
in
that's
fact-
what I mean.
and
He's,
in fact, Mr. Willis was arrested for, I think, the disappearance or the murder of Miss Bletch prior to you meeting Mr. Bluhm.
Blatch.
Miss Bletch, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So he had been arrested for the murder of Rebecca Bletch, and you had already conducted the searches of that Bailey Street address before you met Mr. Bluhm.
Correct.
So you suspected that Mr. Willis had been to that Bailey Street address prior to meeting Mr. Bluhm. So
That's
he
correct.
Give you that information.
I'm talking about Haringa, I'm not talking about Blatch, though.
I understand.
And so when he corroborates that he was there that weekend of the 27th into the 28th, and I corroborate that Willis was there, that's a significant piece of information for me that I call, to me, is evidence. Maybe it's not direct evidence of blood, but it's evidence that I considered very significant because nobody else knew that. Even myself didn't know that. And I had to verify that through records of phone records. When he gives a description of the downstairs, he also gave a description that there was a video camera, a video camera that was used to photograph or videotape. We know that we have recovered multiple video cameras from Mr. Willis on his search warrants, and we have also recovered video camera manuals that we can't find the video camera to, but there is a manual to it.
So there was no video cameras ever recovered from the Bailey Street address?
Not from the Bailey Street address.
Well, let's go to the alleged burial site in Miss Haringa. I thought I heard you say that Mr. Bluhm indicated to you that he said the body was there at least through August of 2015.
That's what he stated. Yes.
Do you believe that to be true?
No.
Why not?
Well, based on the search and cadaver dogs, and I'm not a person that's trained with cadaver dogs, so I'll put that out there to you first. But based on the training of the officers or the troopers that had the cadaver dogs, they said there has not been a body out here. There's not a body buried out here, and so I don't believe
That there
the
wasn't
body
ever?
ever at that location. And then based on his statement to me when he said that they were out there around 12:30, and I know for a fact that Mr. Willis's phone was hitting at 15 minutes later north of where we're at, good 15, 20 minutes north of where we're at. I think that there was some line. I believe that's the portion of where he was lying to me, of taking me out to the railroad tracks and going from there.
And that's the part that I want to question you on, and I'm a little confused at. It's how you can select which parts of his testimony you think are lies and which ones are true.
Because I couldn't corroborate the railroad tracks, that's why. If the dogs would have hit and maybe it hit into a spot and the body wasn't there, then I would say, well, then I would believe his statement at that point in time. His other statements were believable.
Are there any other statements that you found to be unbelievable?
Unbelievable?
Yeah, that you don't believe were true? Any statements?
Not that I can think of, not the top of my head.
Are you willing to say today that you believe all the other statements that he told you are true?
I'm willing to say that I think Mr. Bluhm is well involved and he knows where she's at and that she was there.
Excuse me, that wasn't my question.
Okay.
Just answer my question, please. Do you believe that all the other statements that he made were true? And
Yes.
just that one was not true?
For the most part, yes. I can't think of something else that's not true, but yes.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit A, which is the inventory from the search executed on June 14, 2016 of the Bluhm residence.
Yes, sir.
You recognize the document? It's a 5-page document.
Well, yes.
Were you present at that search?
No, I was not.
Do you have any reason to doubt that this, which was essentially substantiated by previous witness as being accurate?
I think it's accurate, yes.
Okay, do you recognize the, and I'll let you look at it again if you need to, do you recognize the property that was seized?
Well, I believe it, I mean, I never saw the property that was seized, but I believe off of that that's what they seized, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm asking, because I want to know if you're the lead detective in the disappearance of Miss Herringa, I need to know what this property, what evidence this property produced. Okay? And it was executed at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Bluhm, and property was seized there. That property, I guess, I'm going to ask you, where does the property go? Does it ever, if it doesn't go to you apparently, where did it go, do you know?
Well, I believe that was under that property was seized under the complaint number of Rebecca Bletch. So the county sheriff's department, the state police took that stuff at that point in time. And it would have been probably taken to the county sheriff's department where it was logged in at that point.
Okay. So this property that was seized wasn't part of the Herringa investigation, is that correct?
Not initially, no, sir.
Did it become part of the Herringa investigation?
Well, there's a couple, no, it did not,
Never did.
no.
And why is that?
There was nothing that showed evidence of, from Jessica Herringa.
Okay, and that's the answer that I was looking for. So for example, item number 1 is 7 small data disks and 3 hard cases. No evidence was produced from that piece of property, is that correct, with regard to Ms. Herringa?
With regards to Ms. Herringa, no.
What about the 6 data disks, item number 2?
Nothing for nothing with the Herringa investigation, no.
Okay, so there's, I'll just make this quick, there's 22 items here, including a GPS unit from the Chevy Malibu parked in the driveway. Is it your testimony today that this produced no evidence that would corroborate Mr. Bluhm's involvement in the disappearance of Jessica Herringa?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would move to admit this as a document.
There being no objection from the people, will receive Defense Exhibit A as evidence.
Now, there was a second search of the Bluhm residence. I believe it was a vehicle. It was August of last year.
That's correct.
Were you involved in that?
No, sir.
Was that part of the Herringa investigation or the Bletch investigation?
Mr. Hayes, I'm going to interrupt you for
Yes.
1 second. These are, Defense Exhibit A is 5 loose pages. They're all entitled Return to Search Warrant. They all appear to be in the same handwriting, but I'm going to ask that they be stapled so that they become, so that we know it's one exhibit, 5 pages in that order. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, back to my question. The second search of the Bluhm residence, I believe a vehicle was taken. Are you aware of it?
Yes, sir.
Were you involved in it in any way?
No, sir.
Why not?
I was aware of it, but like I said, when you talk about Bletch and Herringa, it's crossing over because we believe that there's some information or belief that Mr. Bluhm was involved with Mr. Willis. I know that the detective at that time used or got the search warrant for his vehicle to check on it, and I think it was under the Rebecca Bletch. Also, but if there's anything that came of that, you know, when you're talking about a team, Mr. Hayes, that you kind of know each other, so they would notify me if any information or evidence was found as far as regarding Herringa.
Did you receive any information from that second search?
That involved Ms. Herringa?
Mr.
No.
Bloom's involvement with the disappearance of Jessica Herringa?
No.
So, outside of my client's statements, is it correct to say you were unable to verify his statements through anything that involved his home or his property or his family?
Directly, no, there wasn't anything that I found towards Herringa.
Did you conduct investigative subpoenas of
Yes,
any of
sir.
the family members?
Yes, sir.
Who?
His wife, I believe his daughter. I can't remember the top names of a couple of them, a couple more people.
Okay. And did that produce any evidence against Mr. Bluhm's involvement in that family's appearance?
No.
I want to go back to this alleged burial site again. And you've already stated you believe that Mr. Bluhm was just lying to you on that.
Yes, sir.
But you stated that it was just the actual site that
Yes,
you
sir.
lied about. Did Mr. Bluhm go with you to the burial site?
Yes, sir.
And did he indicate a location?
Yes, sir.
Prior to arriving at the area that was searched, did he describe it to you, the area?
Like the initial area or
Yeah,
just the
did he say
general
what-
area?
Did he say, you know, it was by some railroad tracks? What did he?
Yeah, he said they were by railroad tracks, off the railroad tracks.
Did he say it was by a tree, a fallen tree, a white tree?
Well, you're saying prior to, and I can't remember if it was prior to or during while we were out there.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying that. I don't
Well,
know.
let's just focus on prior to first. What did he say about that? Do you
It was off the railroad tracks, off of, just up the road from where his house was, Mr. Willis's house was, off of Sheridan. The railroad tracks had been grown over. They're not in use anymore. It was him and he knows that Willis, or Jeffrey Willis at that point in time, had taken Jessica out there. He had received that information initially from Jeff Willis.
Did he describe it to you in a way that made you think he'd been there before?
Yeah, yes, sir. Just, he kind of knew, he goes, there's an opening. You drive up, and on the west side of the road, there's an opening. You have to look for the opening because it's gotten so overgrown.
So he described something to you in detail,
Yes, sir.
which later you decided was a complete and utter falsehood.
Well, I determined it because of,
But you
that we
believe
didn't find her, or the dogs didn't hit it. Yeah,
And there's no evidence of.
there's no evidence. That's correct.
So does that mean anything to you in trying to determine the veracity of his statements? He's able to essentially describe an area as though he'd been there and did something there when you later believe that, in fact, it was a lie.
Your Honor, I guess I'm going to object at this point. I think we're getting argumentative at this point. The lieutenant's already testified that he believes portions of Mr. Bluhm's statements leading up to that and just thinks that he's lying about this location. What we're into now is argument. He's trying to get the lieutenant to say, well, if I don't believe him about this, then that means he's lying about the entire thing. And the lieutenant's pretty clearly stated his position as it relates to Mr. Bluhm and his involvement in this. So this is argumentative.
I don't think it's argumentative. I think he's exploring aspects of the statement that Lieutenant Casher had described earlier on both direct and then partially on cross, and I think he's just delving a little more deeply into that. I'm going to overrule the objection. You may continue, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you. Now talk about the description that Mr. Bluhm, if you recall, do you recall the description of the area when Mr. Bluhm was actually in the area?
Well, we're out there walking back and forth, and he says he doesn't recall, doesn't remember because he was never out there
At first.
And then we kind of pressed him a little bit more, saying, well, if you kind of know this, then you might have been out here. And then his quote was, fuck it, I'll just show you. So he brought me over to an area where there was a mound of dirt. And he says it's next to a tree, a white type, birch type tree with another tree falling over it. That point in time, We had the cadaver dogs coming, so instead of me digging up and ruining any type of evidence, we had Mr. Bluhm leave the site. He went back to the Oak Street, and then I waited for the dogs to come over and do a search of that area.
And based on his statements there about the specific location, you believed at that time that he was telling the truth?
I wanted to believe it. I'm not sure if I was totally believing it at that time, though.
I completely understand that you wanted to believe that. Okay, I think that's human nature.
Yeah,
But you believed it enough to call in the cadaver dogs.
absolutely.
And this may be somewhat redundant, but if the body was there until 2015, and again, we're talking early summer of 16, it'd be less than 12 months, there would be probably some evidence of, would you agree or not?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. I don't know if the lieutenant has foundational background or training to answer that question. He's even said that he's not trained in cadaver dogs or knows what they can search for and look for.
I can withdraw the question, restate it, Your Honor.
The question is withdrawn. I don't think I'm called upon then to rule on the objection if it's with a withdrawn question. Mr. Hayes?
Did you see any evidence of recently unearthed areas, vegetation that had been recently excavated?
No.
Thank you. Can you explain Mr. Willis's traveling on M120 after he supposedly buried the body, as described by Mr. Bluhm?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
What is your explanation? Was it your testimony that according to hits off cell phone towers, that Mr. Willis was traveling northwest or northeast on M120?
That's correct.
Late in the early morning hours of that Sunday after Ms. Herringer's disappearance, correct?
That's correct.
Does he live out that direction?
No, sir.
Is there any indication as to why he might be going out there? Did you ever develop a theory on that?
You want my theory on that?
Sure.
My theory is that Mr. Bluhm and Mr. Willis put her body in there and went out to a location where they know for a fact that, she would not be, found. Whether out M120 somewhere in that vast area, I have no idea because we've searched that place out there too, but somewhere along the line they went out there.
So, did you explore that with Mrs. Bluhm when you did the investigative subpoena interview with her?
I don't recall. I might have, but I don't recall.
Did you receive any information that Mr. Bluhm's cell phone took any hits on cell towers in that area?
We did not. I did not have any. I don't have that, no.
So when was the first time you learned that Mr. Bluhm even existed? When was the first time you remember hearing about Kevin Bluhm?
The first very time his name came up was when we were interviewing friends, family members, and his name was just on the list to go interview. That was the only...
That was during the Fletch investigation?
Yes. A lot of things happened quickly, but you're talking about the minor, that the initial investigation started, and then into Bletch. when the gun came back and the ballistics matched. Then it focused a lot on the Bletch investigation. Jessica wasn't quite, Herringa investigation wasn't quite there yet, but I was part of it. His name came up, and so you're interviewing brothers, family members, friends, and that's the only thing. That's the only time I remember his name.
At what point did you decide that you should do maybe a criminal background check on Mr. Bluhm? Did you ever do that?
Basically, 3 in the morning, June 17th, when I got the call. After that,
What did you learn when you did a criminal background check on Mr. Bluhm?
what did I learn?
Does he have a criminal history?
No.
Did you learn anything at that time or subsequently about his employment history?
Yes, he had been employed 20 years with the correctional facility. He was a sergeant. He held the title as a sergeant.
Is that here in Muskegon?
Yes,
So is that facility operated by the Michigan Department of Corrections?
I believe so, yes.
So it's your testimony today that he was essentially a 20-year state employee with no criminal record?
That's correct.
I'd like to have you testify as to the interviews with him that you were present for. Could you just list them for me?
Which part, where?
The interviews that you were present for with Mr.
Oh.
Bluhm. Be chronological if you can, so I make sure I have a complete list.
The interview initially at the Kentwood Police Department would have been Special Agent Tim Simons.
And you arrived late there, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
about 4:20 in the morning.
Okay.
Detective Sergeant Stasiak from the Michigan State Police. I know that Detective Ferris was there, but was not in the room, I don't believe, at the time.
Okay.
I know that Detective Ben Escalante, Sergeant Detective Ben Escalante of the Michigan State Police was there, but I don't think he was in the room. And then the second interview over at Oak Street,
Okay.
when we kind of, I guess if you want to call it an interview, when we were out at the site on railroad tracks, it was basically myself and Special Agent Tim Simons and Detective Ferris and Lieutenant Mike Anderson. And then over at the Oak Street address, later in the afternoon, it was just me in the room along with Detective Sergeant John Forner of the Michigan State Police.
Did you conduct any other interviews with Mr. Bluhm?
Conducted at I believe it was Monday. We walked in to the jail, and it was along with me and Detective Sergeant Mark Vanderstout. I was just basically saying, I'm still open to information that you have. But it really wasn't an interview.
Okay. At any time, did you ever hear Mr. Bluhm request an attorney?
No, not to me, he didn't.
Did you ever hear him request it to someone else?
No,
Did you ever hear anybody read Miranda rights to Mr. Bluhm?
no.
I could have just 1 minute, Your Honor? Sure. Did Mr. Bluhm ever Well, let me back up. Was your testimony that at some point he recanted all of his statements?
That's correct.
Did he conditionally do so or partially do so? Or was it a unilateral, absolute, everything I said was lying? What was that recantation like?
Recant was when I was pressing them, when they started going up, when I said when at the end, when he said he was out, he knows for a fact he was out at the railroad tracks around 12:30. So it would have been Sunday morning, 28th. I said, I don't believe that's true. We need to have the truth here, because at about 11:45, Jeff Willis's cell phones were hitting up the towers on M120, or 31 and M120, and I just don't believe that. And for a minute there, he goes, well, I don't know where he would have been going. And I said, I think you do. You don't talk, you don't bury a body, you don't take a body out there, or wherever it is you're doing, and then not talk about what you're going to do next, and then fly off. He said, well, we buried the body, I went home. And I go, I don't believe that. And then he went on to say, well, I go, somewhere along the line, you guys headed out M120, or Willis headed out M120, based on those cell towers. And he goes, he stopped for a second, and he just kind of goes, I lied. I lied about that. I go, you're lying about the railroad tracks? He goes, yes. I go, okay. He goes, I'm lying about everything. I don't know if Willis was involved. I have no idea what he said. I don't know anything about what went on.
And subsequent to that moment when he said that, did he ever change that story? Did he ever say?
I didn't really go after. I didn't talk to him again, Mr. Hayes.
Well, you did. Are you aware of any information that he changed his story, that it was all lies?
No, not aware of that.
In order for him to be guilty of this crime, his statements have to be true. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But yet, you have made the determination that some are true and some are false. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're really essentially litigating here the veracity of Mr. Bluhm's statements.
True.
And you want them to be true.
If they're true, yes. I want, bottom line, Mr. Hayes, is I want the truth. I don't want all the Mickey Mouse stuff. I want the truth. And for me to understand how somebody could put themselves in a position of a 20-year career, and you're saying non-criminal, I get all that. That's great. But on the flip side of that is all of a sudden you're going to put yourself in the worst possible storm of a criminal investigation and give up everything you've got for a lie that he put himself into a lie. He's not getting himself out of a lie. I can understand that. In 26 years of my career, I've done drugs, armed robberies, homicides, domestic assaults, and I've been lied to all the way through, but I didn't do it. Not, I did do it, and then, I'm sorry, I didn't do it. I've never, and I mean this, and wholeheartedly I've been trying to figure this whole thing out. You call your wife, who you're not under arrest. I'm not supposed to think in your arrest. He put his hands out to be cuffed, and I'm like, you're not going to be cuffed. I don't need to cuff you. When we're going to the site, he calls her. Why do you say that you resign? Nothing wrong. It completely baffles me. And I guarantee I'm not the brightest guy, but after a while you start looking at all those factors. And so when you're telling me, based on his statements, I just did it to lie to the police, to screw with them. I'm sorry, that makes no sense. It makes sense to me that you lie or you start telling the truth, and then you start getting scared because you're getting close, and you go, whoa, I'll just throw them over here and throw it off. Take you to the railroad tracks. Sorry, he must have moved it. I don't know what. start getting closer, now I'm done. That makes sense to me. Making sense that I'm sick. I'm sick for the last 3 years because of what Jeff Willis did and how he did it and what he told me. Makes sense to me. That makes sense. I've gained weight. I'm not here to sit there and say that Mr. Willis and Mr. Bluhm are one and the same. I think there's some issues here with Mr. Willis. I really do. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't have to really point that out. But I think there's something with Mr. Bluhm that there is a conscience. So when you have a conscience, things go wrong. When you do something wrong and it's eating you up, I think you do have medical problems. I do think you have induced stress and weight gain or weight loss or whatever it is. There's a lot of things in this investigation that haunt me. And I really mean that. And people might think it's funny. The bottom line is, Mr. Hayes, I'm looking for a woman to bring her home. I think Mr. Bluhm knows. I think he's part of it. Maybe not a whole as much as Mr. Willis. But I think there's a part of him that knows where and what and all that. And for whatever reason, he doesn't want to go there. So the statement of him lying to me on the railroad tracks, I really do believe that. He lied. The rest of a lot of these other statements, there are some corroborating factors, not direct and not great, but there are things that he shouldn't have known. And I don't care how and everybody's going to tell me this. I'll retire here and I'll go, there's no way anybody's going to convince me any differently. It's up to the judge, and ultimately, I get that. But nobody's going to tell me any differently that you put yourself in the worst possible storm. I didn't put him there, Mr. Hayes. I got a call at 3 in the morning to run over to Grand Rapids, 45 minutes away. And he's telling me, and I'm telling you right now, he's crying and he's dry heaving and saying, I'm sorry, I should have told this, I should have been more honest.
Do you know, did Mr. Bluhm have any medical conditions that you were aware of during this lengthy interview process?
Other than he was on Xanax and some stress relief or stress medication, and I don't know if he was diabetic or he was going to be diabetic or something like that. He was on a diet, special diet.
So if the interview started at 1:30 on the 16th in the afternoon and it essentially went all night into the next day, including the trip out to the alleged burial site, that's quite a long time for somebody who doesn't have their medication. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But I appreciate your testimony, and I just want to say that I understand that. And police officers might be the most lied to people in the country. But at some point, you're using your judgment to decide the veracity of Mr. Bluhm's statements. Is that correct?
Along with some other corroborating evidence that gives some validity to it, yes. It's not big that like you guys want it to be, but it does shine some light that we haven't talked about here right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Hayes. Mr. Roberts, any redirect?
Just a few, Your Honor, and obviously if Mr. Hayes wants to explore this issue, but I did miss one key point, and we'll just get that out of the way initially. The person that you spoke to that evening, the early morning hours, I should say, of June 17th and onward, is that person in the courtroom right now?
Yes, sir.
Could you point him out for the record and identify what he's wearing right now?
It's Kevin Bluhm. He's wearing a blue jumpsuit type.
I'd ask that the record reflect that the witnesses identify the defendant, Your Honor.
The record will reflect an identification of the defendant.
Thank you. Just want to go over a couple of points that Mr. Hayes went over with you. In regards to the search that took place at the Bailey house, just briefly, if you can, refresh the court's recollection as to what was located in the basement of that Bailey house specifically that might have had some impact on what physical evidence might have been discovered at the Bailey residence?
The detectives located empty jugs of bleach and tied in the corner of the basement.
And without belaboring the point, there was testimony at the preliminary examination from experts from the Michigan State Police Crime Lab about what impact potentially bleach could have on DNA evidence and blood evidence, things of that description. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, when you're searching the Bailey residence, it's now May of 2016, so this is over 3 years since Jessica Heringer's abduction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, specifically in relation to Mr. Bluhm, Mr. Hayes was asking you if you found specific pieces of evidence. I don't want to put words in Mr. Hayes' mouth, but I think what he was looking for was specific physical pieces of evidence that you located either in the vehicle or in Mr. Blum's home that would tie him to Jeffrey Willis. And the answer to that question was no. Is that correct?
In regards to Heringer, that's correct.
But are you aware, and you were present for the testimony earlier from Detective Ferris, that one of the computer towers that was located in Mr. Blum's home had the hard drive removed?
I am aware of that, yes.
And that the hard drive was never recovered and searched?
That's correct.
Are you also aware, in part of the investigation, into whether or not any phone records could be taken from Mr. Blum's cell phone?
I am aware of the cell phone.
Mr. Blum's cell phone?
That's correct.
And in relation to, are you aware if anything was done to his phone that would alter the detective's ability to locate information on his phone?
We had a consent search by Mr. Bluhm for his cell phone. And when the detectives took his cell phone to dump it or to look through it, it had been factory reset.
By Mr. Bluhm?
By Mr. Bluhm, and his admissions that he did reset it.
And that was prior to the first interview, or subsequent to his first statement that he gave to Detective Stasiak, but prior to being interviewed any further?
That's correct.
So before you even talked to Mr. Bluhm, he had already reset his phone and factory reset his phone to wipe all the information off of his phone?
That's correct.
Now, in regards to Mr. Hayes' questions of you about corroborating parts of Mr. Blum's statements and any physical evidence that you recovered corroborating part of that, again, phone records that you did, historical phone records that you obtained for Mr. Bluhm from cell phone providers provided you with geographical information that corroborated at least part of his statement to you about where he was on that Saturday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it would be inaccurate to say that nothing he told you could be corroborated by physical evidence.
No, I mean, I guess that was what I'm saying is that some of it was corroborated by cell phone records. Yes.
And finally, Mr. Hayes was asking you about, and again, without putting words in Mr. Hayes' mouth, he was asking you if you discovered any information that would indicate to you that Mr. Bluhm had changed his statement after he said that he lied about everything. And your answer to that was no, because you didn't have any contact with Mr. Bluhm. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you did, in fact, gain information from the ongoing investigation, speaking with other individuals that Mr. Bluhm may have had contact with in Muskegon County Jail, did you not?
That's correct.
And that would, in fact, indicate that he was...
Object, Your Honor. I believe he's asking about hearsay statements. I'll make a hearsay objection.
Well, Mr. Hayes asked the question if the detective was aware of any information that Mr. Bluhm had changed his statement, and the answer to that question is yes, he is, because of these statements. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what he is, but this is directly in response to Mr. Hayes' question of the detective about whether or not he found any other information that Mr. Bluhm had changed in his statement. So
After the recantation.
After the recantation. So I'm not offering it necessarily for the truth of the matter asserted, but just that he subsequently made statements which would indicate that he was contradicting his prior statement that he lied about everything.
And this is a statement attributable to
Mr. Bluhm?
the defendant?
Yes.
All right, well, I'm going to overrule the hearsay objection on that ground.
But you can answer the question.
Yes. Mr. Bluhm made a statement to an inmate in the county jail while he was there, and he made some statements. Mr. Bluhm made statements to this individual who I interviewed and told me that he was part of the taking away the body of Ms. Herringa.
And this was after the recantation to you, that
Yeah,
I
this is-
lied and made the whole thing up.
This is in the fall, so absolutely, yes.
Nothing
All
further.
right, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to backtrack a little bit on that statement. As to the content of the statement, I think the hearsay objection should be sustained because it's hearsay within hearsay. It's a defendant's statement. That would be admissible. But it's to a party other than to Lieutenant Casher. So on that ground, the substance of the statement should be out. And I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm not going to consider the substance of the statement. Whether he made subsequent statements contrary to the recantation, I believe that's admissible. So if I'm clear.
That's clear, Your Honor.
Do you want me to clarify that with a question? Or is the
No,
court clear?
I'm clear on
Okay.
that. Mr. Hayes, in cross-examination, asked a question, if there was any subsequent statements contrary to the recantation. I think he opened the door
That's
to the
correct.
follow-up question to Lieutenant Casher of, yes, there were subsequent
And he did
statements.
initially answer my question, but he is re-answering it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, your question opened the door to Mr. Roberts' follow-up question, but the substance of the content of the subsequent statement after the recantation would be hearsay within hearsay. Hearsay as to the defendant, admissible against a party opponent. The second half of the hearsay portion, the content of that statement, is inadmissible hearsay at this point. So I'm sustaining the objection as to the content that Mr. Hayes levied earlier. Are we clear?
Yes.
All right, all right. But the fact that a statement was made after the recantation is a valid point that
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts can make, and I'm allowed.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Roberts? I'm sorry.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Okay, anything else, Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, just recross
Sure.
if I may.
Yep.
It'll be brief, I promise. Absent Mr. Bloom's statements, are you aware of any evidence that would have caused you to seek out Mr. Bloom as either a co-conspirator, co-defendant, or accessory after the fact?
Prior to the statements you're asking?
Just take away statements. Find anything, anywhere, that would have led you to go interview him on this crime that's been charged.
Other than that, he was connected to Mr. Willis,
Other than he was a relative, correct?
a good friend relative. I mean, they were close.
Okay, beyond that, any evidence that was ever recovered by anybody?
No.
In your investigation of Mr. Bluhm, did you learn that he essentially grew up in that Bailey Street address? He spent a lot of time there as a child?
He never told me that.
But did you ever discover it from any other source?
No.
Thank you. I'm done.
All right. Mr. Roberts, anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank
All
you.
right. Lieutenant Casher, you can stand down. Thank you.
People rest, Your Honor.
All right. Any evidence, Mr. Hayes?
No. Just argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask the court to bind this matter over to the circuit court as charged accessory after the fact. The testimony of Lieutenant Casher and Detective Ferris has indicated that Mr. Bluhm, in a series of interviews to them, made statements in regards to his involvement in this matter, specifically that he observed a body of a female in the basement of the Bailey address where the prior testimony in the Jeffrey Willis preliminary examinations indicated that the murder of Jessica Herring had taken place. Mr. Bluhm testified that he in fact saw a female that he believed to be Jessica Herring in the basement with Mr. Willis there, and that in the final interview with Lieutenant Casher, I should say, that Mr. Bluhm admitted that he actively participated in helping Mr. Willis dispose of Ms. Herring's body. Beyond that, I'll wait to respond to defense comments in regards to the substance of any other statements.
All right, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, this court is well aware of the burden here that the people must show. The burden doesn't include public opinion. This isn't the court of public opinion. This is not either a psychology department or psychology office or the psychology wing at a local university, Your Honor. This case is about the veracity of Mr. Bluhm's statements. That's what it is. That's all it is. Why he would do it is not relevant. It's whether or not he did it. Whether or not he told the truth or whether or not he lied. Now, it's our position that this charge should be quashed. Primarily because the issue of Mr. Bluhm's truthfulness has been litigated. The principle of collateral estoppel bars, or issue preclusion bars, the issue of his veracity. He has been charged out of the same facts and circumstances. The issue of his truthfulness has been litigated. My client was convicted and sentenced. Secondarily, Your Honor, the people have not met its probable cause burden, meaning they essentially jailed Mr. Bluhm in June of last year, established sufficient bond to keep him there, charged him with lying to the police, which he was convicted of, and then charged him again for accessory after the fact based on the same statement. There's no evidence that he was an accessory after the fact, except his own statements, which an essential part of it is the truthfulness of those statements. If his statements are lies, there's no crime here. His statements have to be true for him to get convicted of the current crime. And we've heard the lead detective say and fight with himself, logically so, about whether or not a person would put themselves in this position voluntarily. But that's the issue we're talking about, the truthfulness. There's no evidence. They've searched his home twice. They've taken property, which they have not returned. They have done an investigative subpoena of his young adult daughter and his wife. They have all this information, and none of it would have led to Mr. Bluhm on its own. It's just his statements. It's all we have, and it's all they have. The fact that he knows his grandpa's house has a back door to the basement, okay, or the fact that he knows that, or he supposedly knows that Miss Herringa was struck. Whether or not Miss Herringa was struck is a theory, Your Honor. It was well publicized that there was a drop of blood found. That's not new evidence. The point is, the witness himself struggled with the veracity of my client's statements. And for those reasons, we believe that this complaint should be dismissed. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Roberts, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Well, I guess at the outset it's important to realize that one of the two things that Mr. Bluhm said during the course of this interview was true. Either he lied about the entire thing, which, and I'll get to that in a moment, I don't tend to believe, or his statements up to that point were true to a certain extent about his involvement, and certainly his last statement, if you took the statement by itself and believed the statement, I understand you have to do that, or at least for probable cause purposes, examine it from that standpoint. If you accepted that statement, then he actively participated in disposing of Ms. Herringa's body. That is classic accessory after the fact material. I'm not aware of any case law which suggests that once a person's been convicted of lying, that's collateral estoppel on the veracity of their statement. Now, is that an issue for the trier of fact to examine? Certainly it would be an issue for the trier of fact to examine. The people's position would simply be, as it relates to that Mr. Bluhm's convictions for lying to the police officers is his initial statements to the detectives. One, as it related to the Bletch investigation, that he hadn't seen Jeffrey Willis in several months leading up to that, when he in fact recanted that and said that he'd seen him just about a month before the officers came and talked to him, and that he didn't know, that his initial statement was that he didn't know that Mr. Willis had any involvement with the Jessica Herringa disappearance, which again is clearly contradicted by his statements. So did he lie at portions of his statements? Absolutely he lied at portions of his statements. But that doesn't mean that the court has to exclude everything he says and just say, well, the entire thing was a lie. The court still has to make that determination, and as the court is well aware, the jury instructions on that instruct a trier of fact that they're free to believe all, part, or none of the witness's statements here. And that's essentially the court that I'm asking the court to do here with Mr. Bluhm. You can believe all, part, or none of Mr. Bluhm's statements. Mr. Hayes wants you to believe that nothing he said was true that night. I'm indicating to the court that because of the testimony of Lieutenant Casher and Detective Ferris and the corroboration that they have talked about in some detail, that Mr. Bluhm's statements are credible as it relates to one, knowing where this crime had taken place, the gash to the forehead, the phone records placing Mr. Willis at that location, the phone records corroborating at least the portion of Mr. Bluhm's statements about where he was on that Saturday night before he went over to the Bailey Street address. All those factors lending credibility to that portion of Mr. Bluhm's statements. I understand it's a unique position that we're asking the court to take here, that we've already convicted the person for lying, so how can we believe anything that he said? But as the lieutenant pointed out on the stand, why would a man with a 20-year history of working for the Department of Corrections, essentially working in law enforcement, throw all of that away? For what purpose? It just defies any rational explanation, certainly for probable cause purposes, to say that he lied about this entire thing. Why would you do that? Why do you call your wife and tell her that you've been sick about this for the last 3 years? That's a moment of clarity for Mr. Bluhm. That's a moment of raw honesty for Mr. Bluhm in talking to his wife and describing what impact this event has had on him and what Jeffrey Willis has done to him over the last 3 years. And the honesty of saying, I need you to resign for me. Why do you do that? What type of person just makes up a lie like that and just compounds it by saying, well, there was this tree and it's a broken branch and it's the railroad tracks and just on and on and on and I folded her up like a taco? Who talks about human beings in that context? What type of individual does that? The type of individual that saw those things. The type of individual that was haunted by those things, if that's the case. That wasn't a lie. Those statements were true. And for probable cause purposes, this court can believe those portions of the statement. It becomes a question for the trier of fact at a later date to determine how much to believe of Mr. Bluhm's statements here, but there's no question he made those statements. Those statements are corroborated as Lieutenant Casher and Detective Ferris had testified, and I'd ask that you bind him over on the charge of accessory after the fact.
Your Honor, may I respond? I know it's out of order.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know if Mr. Roberts misunderstands my argument or is deliberately misstating it. This is not a credibility question. I'm not asking the court to dismiss this based on my client's lack of credibility. This is not credible. This isn't about he lied at some point in the past and therefore we can't believe his statements. What I'm saying is this issue has been litigated. It's the fact that he was actually convicted of lying on this investigation. 2 counts.
I understand.
And also, Mr. Roberts alluded to a corpus issue, and I did not raise the corpus issue. Thank you.
All right. Well, as to the issue of collateral estoppel or issue preclusion, really what you're arguing is double jeopardy. That's the real argument that you're arguing.
It's not double jeopardy.
All right,
it's very similar to it.
Well, I'm finding that on double jeopardy grounds. This is the crux of the argument that you're making. This is different elements to this crime. Blockberger is the seminal case in this regard. I'm finding there's different elements as to accessory after the fact of a felony and to the lying to a police officer in a violent crime investigation. So on the double jeopardy issue, that I think is of the undercurrent of your argument, I'm making a ruling that I'm following Blockberger. There's different elements in both crimes, and so double jeopardy is not violated. As to your issue of collateral estoppel or issue preclusion, that's a novel position to take.
It's been decided by the Michigan Supreme Court.
I've been cited no law on this matter. I've been given no guidance as to this. If you want to have me consider that before I make a decision, I'm open to that. But neither party has cited any law as to the issue of collateral estoppel or issue preclusion different than the underlying current of the double jeopardy issue that I'm familiar with. So I'll give you a chance to do that, Mr. Hayes, if you want me to consider that. All right, so what's your...
Your Honor, I do have a case here. It's People v. Wilson, 496 Mich 91 from 2014, and it is on the issue of issue preclusion.
Okay, one more time. It's Wilson, but at 496...
496
and the page.
91
91
from 2014. And I would ask the court to consider that before its ruling.
All right, I will. Anything else on that issue?
No, just
All
that.
right, I'll read that case. I'm
Thank you.
interested in reading the case. Mr. Roberts, anything else?
I have not read the case, so.
All right, well, we'll take a recess. I'm going to read the
Okay,
case.
okay.
I think everybody else can read it while I'm reading it.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's mine, I gave her.
Detective Casher. Just checking, I've got him here.
I'm gonna give you a whole bottle. Just hang out here and do that.